Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we with the microphone? Are we up to full max, Dana? We are, oh, we are now. Okay, I know that this is what we need in order for everybody to hear easily and well, so if for some reason it changes or I forget, please raise your hand, wave, yell, all that kind of good stuff so that you can hear what needs to be heard. So greetings this morning. Happy Vernal Equinox to you all, both those of you here in our sanctuary and those online who are joining us for the Unitarian Universalist Westside Congregational service this morning. Our Equinox celebration is titled A Balanced Life. It is based on source number 6, Spiritual Teachings of Earth-Centered Traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature, and Principle 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We hope that you discover new ways of living those in your life through today's program. I am the Reverend Dr. Nancy Hitt, Consulting Minister for this congregation. If you are joining us for the first time today, we welcome you. For those here in our sanctuary, contact information is on the back of your bulletin. Is there anyone here who would like to introduce themselves?
Sure.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Kate Nira. I use she, her pronouns. I know these two really well.
Yay!
Welcome.
Welcome.
And Daniel?
Good morning, I'm Daniel. It's very nice to be here.
Welcome, Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Good morning to you both, and thank you for introducing yourselves. If you are joining us online, please feel free to email any questions or comments you may have to me at ministeruuwc@gmail.com. We extend our thanks today to Bram and Roxy Cast-Hecht, who are our greeters, to Dana Sanford, who is once again monitoring the sound system and cranked that volume up for us, to Steve Poyani, who is videotaping our service, to Melinda Lewis, who will be lighting candles for us, and to Jay Kane, who will be carrying the mic around for some wonderful discussion later on. Here are the announcements for this week. Please remember that our Storehouse West donation basket is in the social hall in the corner on the courtyard wall. They welcome all non-perishable foods. This past week, we received a letter of thanks from them for our donations in 2021. So last year, we contributed 2,334 pounds of food, which was part of their grand total of 19,456 pounds of food from 16 area churches. That was 918 pounds more than the previous year, despite the fact that there were 3 fewer churches actually participating. So we did good, folks, and that is really great. However, this past month, we only donated 51 pounds. And if you do the math, you will realize that we have fallen below the bar that we set for ourselves. So when you get home, maybe loop a grocery bag over a doorknob somewhere, stick stuff in it during the course of the week, and try to remember to bring it with you and stick it in that basket when you come next time. I want to let you know that the Endowment Committee will be meeting on Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the social hall. Next Saturday, March 26th, the third in our series of classes titled Gender, Sex, and Sexuality, will meet in the social hall at 10:30 a.m. This week's class will begin learning about transgender issues. Discussion of material will occur on Sunday as well, the 27th, at 9:50 a.m. in the social hall, and everyone is welcome to attend either or hopefully both of those events. The Wisdom Walkers, and you know who you are, and you're all welcome to join and become one. It's a hiking group. We'll be meeting next Saturday, the 27th, at 12 noon. So as soon as those of you who are part of the Gender, Sex, and Sexuality program are done, you will be gathering in the parking lot and taking off for a hiking path that I can't remember the name of, but it's going to be fun. If you have questions, you can either email Teresa Watson or ask me, and I will do my best to answer them. Our town hall meeting is today, following our service. It includes a potluck lunch, and everyone on site is invited to attend, whether this is your first or 101st time with us. I also have a special announcement for next Sunday's service, and that is, in next Sunday's service, you know how we have moments for this and moments for that? Okay, we're going to have a special moment for drumming. So, if you are the owner of a drum, or a whirro, or a rattle, a percussive instrument, is that what I'm going for? Yes. If you have any of that you would like to bring and play, or bring to share with someone else who might want to play it, please bring them with you to next Sunday's service. I will put this in our newsletter so you get a reminder midweek, but expect to have a fun time percussing. Are there any other announcements that need to be, Melinda?
Just that Storehouse West also reminded us that there is a clothing free bank for students that's right there next to them, and they can accept donations, and it's for all ages of students. So some of us may be small enough, not me, but for high school or middle school, clothing donations. So think of Storehouse West when you have clothes to donate.
Okay, so you can also bring used clothing that would fit students of any age and size to put in with our Storehouse West donation, and they will get it to the facility that dispenses that. Any questions or other announcements? All right then. Yes.
Oh, if you want to donate socks or underwear for kids, they're always welcome. But they have to be in new packaging.
That's true. Socks and underwear are indeed always welcome. Can you imagine being without them? Seriously, it's just basic, and they do need to be in new packaging. They cannot be used. Thank you very much for that. Now, I want to call your attention to our table. That's okay, Melinda, I'm going to ramble on for a minute. Melinda is going to help me out in a minute. So, we are preparing to light candles representing the 4 directions, and then we will light our chalice. And in doing that, I would like to remind us that there are many ways to do all of these things, that many earth-based traditions mark sacred time by the changing of the seasons and similar, but not necessarily exactly the same, images. So some of you may be very familiar with one or another pagan practice and habit of associating particular colors with specific directions and elements. But in fact, there are many different ways to honor such paths. The material that we are using this morning in terms of the directions and their colors and that sort of thing are based from a resource on UUA.org. So we are being very Unitarian about what we're doing. It may be new or different than what some of you are expecting, but I frankly think that's a really good thing. I really wanted to go radical and do something that I thought would be absolutely new to everybody, but sometimes new is distressing. So I chose a middle road. We'll talk about that later. But here's how this will work. In a moment, Melinda will come up and she will assist us by lighting the candles and then later the chalice. I will be, not just as yet, but I will be asking you to rise, and as we light each candle, I will say the words of the invocation for that particular direction. Melinda will light the candle. I will conclude each invocation with the phrase, "with your presence here." That's your cue to respond with the response that is in your bulletin by saying, "Spirits of," whichever direction we're doing, be with us now. Does that make sense, or do we have questions? We're good. All right, then Melinda, if you would join us up here. And if you would all rise, please, as you are able. Spirits of the East, element of air, breathe through our lives and circle us with your invigorating embrace and energize us with your presence here. Spirits of the East, be with us now. Spirits of the South, element of fire, transform our hearts and minds with your energy. Inspire us with your presence here. Spirits of the South, be with us now. Spirits of the West, element of water, refresh us with your flow. Gentle us as mist, renew us as rain. Still us as snow, shape us with your presence here. Spirits of the West, be with us now. Spirits of the North, element of earth, sustain us now with your presence. Ground us in your insight and wisdom. Grant us introspection and self-awareness with your presence here. Spirits of the North, be with us now. Spirits and energy that create and guide above, spirits and energy that create and sustain below, guard and guide us with your presence here. Spirits of above and spirits from below, be with us now. Now, please join me in the words for our chalice lighting, which are in your bulletin. Our chalice flame is but a small light in the dark, yet it illuminates our whole lives. May we find a proper balance in all things, even when, like our chalice, something very small balances something very big. Shalom. And please join me as we affirm our aspirations. Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom. Now, if you would pick up your hymnal, our opening song is number 81. And we will be singing this to a very familiar melody, and we're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 5. And of course, it just dawned on me that you don't really know what that melody is. If you recognize the Chalice canon, it's that, and if you want to look at the music, it's at number 370. However, it goes like this. The wordless mountains bravely still, the ground below us firm and free, the gentle quilt of field and hill shall grant us solid dignity. With breathless wind through leafless trees and gasp of currents on the wing, our hearts soar high upon the breeze of songs the spirit longs I invite you now to join me in a moment for centering. Sit back wherever you are, here in your pew, at home, in your favorite spot. Be relaxed, yet upright. Uncross your ankles, your wrists, your knees. Let the energy flow easily through your body. Close your eyes if you are comfortable doing so, or choose a focal point and let your gaze go soft. Focus your awareness on your breathing. Breathing in deeply and fully. Breathing out completely as you can. Inhaling energy. Exhaling tension. Inhaling peace. Exhaling fear. Inhaling serenity. Exhaling conflict. Simply breathe. Be at peace in yourself. In your mind's eye, let a seesaw appear, balanced securely on its fulcrum. Admire the balance of the beam as it rests there. As you gaze at it, realize this is an image of your life. And take note of what appears on it. What is it that you hold in balance in yourself? Does the seesaw move in response to particular parts of you, of your life? How can you offset it to restore your equilibrium? As you move the elements of your life on the seesaw, pay attention to the motion as it works to balance those elements. Is your ride soothing or exciting or scary? Is it boring? Are you stuck either up in the air or down on the ground? Take note of how your life is balanced and tuck the information away to follow up on later. Let the image fade and return your attention to your breath. Breathing in and breathing out in life-giving balance. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Shalom. Sharing our joys and concerns is one of the ways that we balance our lives. We share our joys, the ups of our lives, and the downs, the concerns and difficulties. And we know that we are understood and loved and supported. As you name what you would like to share today, Melinda will light a candle for each one. If you are here in the sanctuary, raise your hand and I will bring you the mic. If you are at home, you may light your personal candle at any time. And I have to say, the first hand in the air was Adia's.
It's not on.
Technically it is.
Yeah, now I could barely hear
There you go. Talk right into it.
So, I'm going on a vacation with Tracy. I'm doing Madison's and I'm going to sleep for one night.
Wow.
An overnight
Yes.
vacation. Very good.
Yeah, Tracy's watching Madison and Jordan's house while they're out of town, and she's going to spend a night there. Yeah, it's a sleepover. And I have a joy. Last week, put your hand on. I have a joy. Sandy and I celebrated our 38th anniversary last week.
I have a joy that Social Security will no longer be taxed.
I have a joy. Roxy and I got away last weekend for the first time since 2008. We saw a wonderful band, her favorite band, and it was just fabulous. We had great seats. I was able to record some of it, and one of the lead guitarists had to drop out of being on live stage about 2 years ago because he has developed Parkinson's. Well, he came out and did 3 songs.
I did see other hands. And then pass it down.
The concern for my mom is still there. She's back home, but she does have to have another surgery at some point. We're not sure exactly when. She meets with the surgeon in April. My joy is I got to see my Savannah yesterday and found out her college graduation is in May, before she heads off to her master's and PhD program, and something I have no idea what it is. And later today I get to Zoom with my boys.
All right.
I have 2 joys. One is that I got to see, I'm just glad to hear somebody else got music this weekend. I got to go see one of my all-time favorite groups, Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Oh, man.
And it was a fabulous concert, and one of the original, actually 2 of the original members were there, and they're going to celebrate their 50th year as a group next year. So it was nice to see Miss Louise and Carol Ann up there, and it was just a joy. And my other joy is that I have met a masseuse who travels to Rio Rancho every now and again. So if anybody wants to know this information, they're down in Hillsborough, is where he lives. So if you're in Truth or Consequences, we can hook you up.
I have one concern and one joy. The concern is I come to New Mexico frequently to help out my parents. My father is severely disabled, has been since I was a little kid. And we have not been having great luck finding a healthcare worker that is interested in just an hour or 2 of work a day, because he really only needs help getting out of bed a few mornings a week. And very understandably, people want full-time work, but that is just not what we offer. So we are still inviting in that perfect person, and we know that they are out there, and maybe one of you happens to know who that perfect person is. And my joy is that I was invited to do a performance of one of my solo shows, the Tarot Show, also down in Hillsborough, instigated by the lovely massage therapist that Arwen was just talking about. So I'm excited to be going down and performing there April 1st.
Thank you.
I spoke with my stepmother last night, and a sorrow is that her brother up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, has been diagnosed with lung cancer. So he will have some more testing to see how advanced it is and if anything can be done. And then also a joy, her sister, who lives in the Pittsburgh area and has Parkinson's, will be undergoing the deep brain stimulation surgery that helps tremendously with the tremors. And so she's very excited for late April for that.
I would also add an additional joy, my niece, who is also my goddaughter from way back when, is in or finishing medical school, etc. And that's a really long and convoluted process, as many of you know. This is the week, this past week, where they find out whether or not they matched with any place they actually wanted to be for their residency. And she did, and she's ecstatic to be able to stay at Maine Medical Center and do her residency in internal medicine. So that was a huge, big deal for her. I also want to light a candle of concern, continued concern for Ukraine and Russia and all of the people, especially the citizens of both countries who are in such distress, and that leadership might find a way to peace as well. And light one last candle for all the joys and concerns that we still hold in our own hearts. And our red candle draws on the fiery power of the South to transform. It is our witness on behalf of all victims of racial violence. May the evil of racism be transformed into an affirmation of human uniqueness. May the energy of that transformation inspire creativity and love. Slava. Now I'm going to invite Bram to come and do our animal ministry moment for us.
Find a love to shout about. Give your all or nothing at all. That's what makes the best kind of love. Find the one who puts a wiggle in your tail. Don't settle for less because you don't want to be alone. When the chemistry is right, you'll feel it. Now this is a dog, and his name is Sammy. And Sammy says, "Dear pack leader, I just want to take a moment and let you know how lucky I am to have such a thoughtful companion. Most doggies have to hunt leaves one by one, but you conveniently rake them into little hills all around the yard. You even yelled, 'Sammy, I just raked those,' to let me know that they're ready for me to jump into. And they scatter all over the yard. And you further cheer me on by yelling, 'Sammy, come on.' You know, I used to get a bit jealous when you'd set out warm, clean clothes fresh from the dryer for the cat to sit on. But that's just one pile of clothes. You must have made like 4 or 5 piles of leaves for me. I will show my gratitude later by barking at the doorbell when the kids are napping. In the meantime, I'll go in the house when you rake the leaves."
Thank you. So our moment for all ages this morning, we're going to focus on the vernal equinox, which is such a lofty sounding term. It's actually today. I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to stand here and attend to a holiday on the actual day. Because we only ever meet on Sundays, we're always a day ahead, a day late, whatever, and it works. but I just really like it when things are in alignment. And seeing as we're talking about equinox and balance, the idea that I can do that on the day makes me personally very happy. So, vernal simply means spring. The amount of daylight and darkness are the same in length. The word comes from the Latin, the word for equal, and nox meaning night. So we have equal day, equal night on either March 20th or 21st, depending on the calendar year and a whole lot of other scientific stuff we don't need to get into. However, it does signal the start of spring up here in the northern hemisphere for us. So today in the southern hemisphere, they're celebrating the start of fall, which is kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around, but that's what it is. So here's the science of it. Basically, the Earth tilts at an angle of 23.5 degrees on its axis relative to its plane of orbit around the Sun. Now, as the Earth orbits the Sun over the course of a year, different places get sunlight for different amounts of time. An equinox occurs at the moment when the Earth's axis doesn't tilt toward or away from the Sun. Someone standing at the equator on an equinox can see the Sun passing directly over their head. That only happens twice a year. So we have sun rises due east, sets due west, and the equinox is that straight line right there across. It heralds the change in season. For us, as I just said, right now it means spring. And there are stories from all over the earth about the equinox and spring and the return of growing things. So I'm going to share just a couple of them with you. Now, the first one I have, humor me for a minute. I have no idea how clearly you can see this, but see this little bird? Pretend it's a swallow. So the story goes from China that from 1600 to 1046 BCE, the Shang Dynasty legitimized their status as divinely ordained rulers through a story of mythical origin. It was said that Qian Ti ingested the egg of a swallow sent from heaven. She then gave birth to Hsia, the first ruler of the dynasty. In Chinese mythology, the vernal equinox is also called the day that the swallow returns. So in China, we are at the day that the swallow returns. Now, of course, in the West, Ostara, originally a Germanic goddess, is the most famous tale regarding the equinox, a bird, and a hare. Ostara arrived late one spring and found a bird dying of the frost. And though she warned the bird, it could no longer fly. So out of compassion, she turned the bird into a snow hare named Lepus. Bunny. Do what you will in your imagination, turn him into a snow hare. In order that he might remember his life as a bird, she allowed him to lay eggs once a year. In gratitude, he would lay colorful eggs as gifts to Ostara. In some versions, he became her lover, and when he strayed, as hares may do, she flung him into the heavens to become a constellation. So now you know both how we get colored Easter eggs from a rabbit and a constellation in the sky. One thing that these tales share is a message about the importance of regeneration. The day the swallow returns was the day that meant there would be renewed prosperity for the Chinese. When Ostara was late, birds died of frost. Her return signals the world's renewal. And then you probably remember the story from ancient Greece, in which Persephone is a goddess of the equinoxes, because her journey into the underworld in spring, out of the underworld in spring and then back in fall, is the transformative journey of nature. In the myth, Persephone, daughter of Demeter, is seized by Hades and taken to the underworld to be his wife. She's not real happy about that, and her mother, Demeter, is absolutely grief-stricken. She causes the world to die. No plants bear fruit, no bees pollinate, no flowers bloom. At last, an agreement is made in which Persephone can be returned to her mother. But because the youthful goddess has eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, she must return to the underworld for 6 months of the year to be the wife of Hades. She returns to her mother and life is renewed. Spring happens. When she leaves again in the fall, life hibernates. Now, I tried really hard to get us a pomegranate. Couldn't do it. They just didn't have any. So please use your imagination. I chose a red apple because that's the other fruit we women always get blamed for causing trouble with. So that's our stand-in for the pomegranate. And I think that perhaps one of the best ways to imagine the balance that all of these stories are trying to teach us about was summed up by Ursula Le Guin. Remember her? Yes. Light is the left hand of darkness. So, at this point, I want to move to our gifts of love and commitment. Our congregational life is an exercise in equilibrium. I don't know that anybody knows that better than I do, but trust me, it really is. Every week, we balance our resources and efforts and intentions and programs in order to keep ourselves able to carry out our mission. For all of the ways in which each of you, all of us, contribute to that, we thank you. Does anyone else need the basket? Okay, then Graham, if you'll bring it up, we'll sing our chorus. Okay. Thank you. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if you will turn in your hymnal to number 651, toward the very back, and stand as you are able. We are going to read The Body is Humankind as a responsive reading. I will read the bold-faced type, if you would respond with the italics. I am a single cell in a body of 4 billion cells. The body is humankind. I am a single cell. My needs are individual, but they are not unique.
I am interlocked with other human beings, and consequences of our actions, thoughts, and feelings.
I will work for human unity and human peace, for a moral order in harmony with the order of the universe.
Together we share the quest for a society of all equal opportunities.
A society in which we need not live beneath our moral capacity and in which justice has a life of its own. We are single cells in a body of 4 billion cells. The body is humankind. Thank you. Please be seated. I recently saw a bumper sticker that said, "Humankind, be both." So our focus for our time here together today is balance. I titled the program A Balanced Life. We've done some rituals, we've lit a lot of candles, we've shared some experiences here, stories. all of which I hope have spoken to us in one way or another about balance. And if nothing else, I'm sure you figured out that your consulting minister can overwork a metaphor better than many. However, here's the thing. Science tells us that we actually need to perceive, either see and read or hear, or somehow become aware of something 12 times before we remember it. This is the science behind advertising and why the same commercial keeps broadcasting ad nauseum, and you just don't want to hear it anymore, but it takes 12 times apparently for us to learn. So we're going to continue to talk about balance. The equilibrium of light and dark that we get at the equinox, balanced, same amount. If you think about the full circle of life, that's only 2 points. Out of 360 degrees in a circle, only those direct two opposite ones are in alignment that make our equinox. So if that's where balance is on the equinox, actually, most of the time, we're either coming or going from it, depending on what your point of view is. Now, sometimes, wherever we are in that process, is wildly exhilarating and exciting, and we're really happy with it. Other times, maybe we feel like we're on the downside swing of that, and we're not real happy with how things are going, but somehow we do still come back in time, full circle, to these 2 points that give us this equal distribution, where today we can take a deep breath and say, it's even, it's balanced. Light and dark, and whatever meaning you attribute to those, are in balance today. Now tomorrow they're going to be at least 1 degree off. And that's just going to keep on going until we get, 180 degrees down around to the fall equinox. So balance is actually a pretty temporary kind of thing. And yet it is still something that we want to strive for. Because seriously, who would want to get stuck anywhere else around the circle? We need these times of balance so that we can breathe and take a look and see the wholeness of this circle that we call life. So I've been doing a lot of thinking in the last couple of weeks in regard to balance, and I'll tell you, I just had some amazingly genius insights. Couldn't tell you right this second what they all were. However, the more I thought about balance, I thought, okay, we talk about living a balanced life. We read and we hear lots of stuff about balancing sleep and activity, our food intake and our energy output. We balance all kinds of things, and we kind of take those in stride. There's lots of information out there, for example, about how to eat a balanced diet. Now, you can eat a balanced omnivore diet or a balanced herbivore diet. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of balance that we can achieve under that umbrella of diet. And there's lots of information out there for all of them. Those probably are somewhat less of a challenge, or at least easier to find support and resources for, than some of the other kinds of balance that we, as a community, come here seeking. I'm going to make the brazen assumption that we are all here with one thing in common. We are looking to pay attention to the patterns of life and how those things fit together in a meaningful way for us. Now, we don't all come at that from the same perspective. People don't come into our sanctuary even for the same reasons. For example, a very small percentage of Unitarian Universalists, and we're looking denomination-wide here, I'm not just talking about our congregation, a very small percentage of people actually grow up and stay Unitarian, and are here because this is what they have known from the cradle, they still find it meaningful, etc. Then there's another equally small, if not maybe even smaller, percentage of folks who choose to come here simply because they find the theology that is expressed here, the kind of religion and the way that that's carried out, to be in the best possible keeping with their own personal values. That's actually a very small percentage. The rest of us, 80% or more, are here as a last-ditch effort after we've had a harmful, hurtful experience someplace else. And that is true denomination-wide. We're kind of a refugee camp. Seriously. But if you think about a refugee camp, it's a stressful place to be. You know, when people are looking for safety, and that's a very valid, life-affirming thing to be doing, you want to support that. But it makes for a lot of chaos, and it makes for difficulty in finding balance when it comes to what kind of community is this? You know, for those of us who have been here for a while, we sort of think, well, we're familiar, we know what we're about here. I'm not so sure we do, because we don't talk about it a whole heck of a lot. We make very bold assumptions. So here's my challenge for us today. I want to ask you a few questions, and I will read through them first, and then I'm going to arm Jay Kane with a microphone. And yes, and I really want us to have some conversation, because balance is something that doesn't automatically happen. Sometimes you're really lucky. Remember when you were on the playground with those seesaws? You knew which of your friends you could actually ride the seesaw with, who was roughly equal to you in terms of ballast. You know, you weighed the same amount or had the same amount of energy, so that one of you didn't get on and the other one flew up into the air and got stuck there. That's never fun. You know, while being up might sound like being better than being down, being stuck up is not good. You know, and then there's the whole, you get off, and the one who's up comes crashing down, and that's not good either. So, being intentional about balance and the decisions we make to choose balance in our communal life together is extremely important. So here are my questions. Now, first off, I'll ask you just something for you to reflect on in terms of yourself, more so you can set it aside than anything else. But where do you work at achieving balance in your own personal life? Just let yourself identify what those things are. And here are some that have to do with us as a congregation. How does UUWC, how does Westside nurture balance in your life? Secondly, how do we, as a community, respond to the need for balancing community needs with the needs of individuals? Those two will probably keep us busy for a while. Seriously. So if you've had a moment or two to think about where you're seeking balance in your own life, so that you can sort of separate your larger life from what you come looking for here. And then, you know, how does being here nurture balance in your life? And how do we as a community respond to the need for balance between community, commitment, and individual needs?
One thing this community does for me is allow me to contribute in the ways that work for me, balancing my introversion with my desire to participate, and so I can participate in several ways that suit me, and I can say no thank you to the ones that would be difficult or stressful for me.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. That's good to know.
I try to balance my animal love and what I can do for the congregation that way, and my personal love of my music too.
Okay. Others? Oh, couple down here.
This place nurtures what I need to find for my spirit without requiring a dogma.
Okay.
It allows me to be in community with others without having to pretend to believe everything.
Okay.
And this place helped me find my voice.
It's good to hear it.
I honestly came because of Donna. We talked online about the Cups community.
Yep.
And I thought, well, we can come to the church a couple of times, maybe my husband will like it, but, you know, And, I mean, truly, I have one of those love-hate relationships with my Christian experience. And I got here, the first day we came was winter solstice. And then we came to Christmas Eve service. And I gotta tell you, hearing the person in the pulpit tell me Jesus was a bastard.
That was me. I will take full responsibility for that.
Really changed how I viewed this church. And I now see it as more of a community, slowly turning into family. I'm somebody who's really slow about that. And then I found that Karen was here. We actually stood next to each other at winter solstice and didn't recognize each other because we do Zoom meetings, so we don't have masks.
Right.
So yeah, the church has brought me a lot of balance in my life, and in some of the ways I've tried to balance my past religious experience with this has really helped me grow. So thank you.
I think most of you know that I came here originally because you were helping with Feed Real Ranch of Kids. And I really wasn't searching for a church at that point in time, but I thought, you're helping me, so I should see what's going on here. And I'm kind of like Arwen, I have a mixed love-hate relationship with all things Christianity. And I have found here an openness and an acceptance which helps me balance what is a very busy life, because I am deeply involved in democratic politics, and this is a way to think about something else, and I find that very important in balancing my life.
I combine what this church gives me to what I'm trying to balance at home. And one of the things I'm balancing at home is with my husband, which we all do with our spouses, our partners. And so I try to balance his needs and his interests with mine. But the one thing that he doesn't give me is a spiritual, because he comes from a different a background and a different set of feelings about religion and spirituality than I do. And he does give me in some ways. I don't want to say he's not spiritual, but he doesn't. And my ability to come back to the Unitarian Church, because I was brought up in the Unitarian Church, and the whole time I was married, we've been married, we were out of the country, living in third world countries that did not have UU fellowships or churches or anything like that that I could find. So when I came back here, this balance, it gave me a balance to my life that was missing in terms of a place to come and explore my spirituality and develop or become more so in a way that I don't get all except for on my own at home. So it's been a good thing.
Does anybody else want to speak to their personal, how this church nurtures your personal balance? Then we don't have a whole lot of time, and I know we're not going to answer this probably to anyone's satisfaction, but sometimes that's the most effective way to leave, because I hope that it will eat away at you, or that you will chew on it, pick your metaphor, when you leave. Because I want to call our attention to the second question, which has to do with how do we as a community, collectively, how do we balance the needs of the individual and the community? And maybe it would help if I filled in a few blanks. For example, when was the last time you felt like you took one for the team? And you volunteered to do something, not because it was part of your best skill set or because you enjoyed doing it, but because it needed to be done on behalf of the community and you were capable. You know, these are rhetorical, you don't actually have to give me dates and times, but I want us to start thinking about how we achieve balance within a community. Always a process in flux. And yet, we should always be striving for harmony and some sense of balance. Because you know what it's like when you feel like you're the only one who somehow knows how to clean a toilet? I mean, seriously, we all know that's not true. And it's something that has to be done to keep the balance here, because believe me, without it, none of us would be here. So I want us to start thinking about our own commitment. There is how the community nurtures us and helps us maintain our personal balance. But how do we return that balance back to the community? Where do we make commitments? And how do we agree to do things? I can tell you, I'll give you a short vignette to close with. Back east, so this doesn't apply to anybody here in real life, but I was pastoring a church that was in the midst of a conflict over the start of the fiscal year. Should they start the fiscal year on January 1st, which is the start of the calendar year, or should they use the old-fashioned banking year, which would go from July 1st through June 30th? Now, up until that point in time, every church in New England was on the fiscal year, started July 1st and ran through July 30th. But with the advent of computers and changing practices hither, thither, and yon, lots more people were using the calendar year instead of switching back and forth. And the motion had come before the church, and I had one man, just one man, who really firmly believed that the fiscal year was important and was the right way to go. I don't remember all the detailed reasons. He had them. I just don't happen to recall them. What I recall is the painful process of trying to find balance in a community in which everyone was over here, and here was Lou, all by himself. Standing his ground, he had expressed what he believed was right and best. And of course we did the democratic thing, and we took a vote. And guess what happened? Yeah, Lou lost. Lou lost by a landslide. Nobody ever lost as big as Lou lost. And I saw him walking down the stairs afterwards. You have never seen a more dejected, his posture, he was just bent. Like, his arms were limp, his shoulders were slumped, his head was down, and this was a fellow who normally had almost military bearing. And I said to him, Lou, you know, thank you for doing what you did. You know, you took a stand, you spoke to it, you upheld it with honor, and he looked at me and he said, and I lost. Like, everybody voted against me. He was embarrassed and somewhat ashamed because he felt like he'd been proved wrong. At which point the task of the congregation no longer had anything to do with fiscal dates or calendar dates or anything like that. It had to do with how do you restore the equilibrium of our community. And it was only one person. But that one person was like the kid on the seesaw. They can't get off the ground. Well, that's probably the wrong analogy because if everybody else was up here, they'd weigh more than Lou, but you get the picture. You know, he was literally odd man out. And so that dilemma, how do we make commitments? How do we treat the one or two or whatever, the small minority who are on the outside of whatever the majority wants without getting triumphant? And I had one or two people who were like, woohoo, we told you we were right. And I was like, seriously? You know, I thought you cared about, well, they did care about Lou. And to their credit, they got with the program really fast. And were able to honestly and with great conviction convince him that he had done the right thing, even though they didn't happen to agree with the specifics of what he was advocating for. You know, that's one of those stories of stuff that happens in churches that causes horrible conflict, because what often would have happened was that Lou would have left. He would have been ashamed and embarrassed and figured that nobody bothered to vote with him, nobody liked him, nobody cared enough to support him, etc. And he would have been history and everybody else would have just been really happy we all won. And that would have been the worst possible outcome. Destructive for the community because they would have learned nothing good, and destructive to this individual person. They didn't do that. You know, they reconnected with him, and they actually did pretty much all agree that it was important that he stood his ground, that he spoke his truth, and that even though they voted against it, they affirmed him for speaking that and incorporated him back into the network of the community. Those are the kinds of things I want you to think about. How do we do that? How do we make commitments? Because sometimes you're going to want to say, you know what? I don't really care whether it's fiscal or calendar year. So you know what? I could support Lou. I could vote with him as easily as I could vote with them. So maybe I'll take the less comfortable position and I'll make a commitment over here. I don't know. I'm not saying there are perfect answers, but there are lots of questions like this that we need to openly consider and talk about. Because if we don't talk about them and they stay hidden, y'all know what happens to stuff that we bury underground, right? Yep. The pressure builds and it erupts somewhere somehow, and that's almost never pretty. So, thank you very much for your participation and your willingness to sort of go with me on this. I'm looking at the clock, and we're going to skip our closing song and move into extinguishing our chalice and then releasing the spirits of the four directions. So if you would take your bulletin, you will notice that our words for chalice extinguishing are first, and you have a response to each of my dismissals for the directions. Your response being spirit of whichever direction, we bless and release you. So let's extinguish our chalice together. We are part of the balance of the universe. We extinguish our chalice flame from sight, yet hold it in our hearts, ever committed to living in harmony with the patterns of life it illuminates within us. Shalom. Spirits of the East, element of air, we are grateful for your presence and activity among us. Spirit of the East, we bless and release you. Spirit of the South, element of fire, we are grateful for your presence and activity among us. Spirit of the South, we bless and release you. Spirits of the West, element of water, we are grateful for your presence and activity among us. Spirits of the West, we bless and release you. Spirits of the North, element of earth, we are grateful for your presence and activity among us. Spirits of the North, we bless and release you. Spirits above and spirits below, we are grateful for your presence and activity among us. Spirits above, spirits below, we bless and release you. May you find balance in your life. Never the stagnation of holding still, but always the energy of creating, renewing, and fulfilling the circle of life. May you know yourself to need and be needed by community, always. Blessed be. Now, if you'll face each other across our center aisle, we will sing Go Now in Peace before we adjourn to potluck and town hall meeting. Ready to sing?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may